G'day, Mark Ferguson from Next Gen Agri, talking about wool colour and fleece rot today, and just going through a quick run through of how it forms. So within a greasy wool sample, we've got not only the wool itself, the wool fibres, but also when it's on the sheep, we've got bacteria floating around, as all of us do, floating around on the surface. We've got these swint particles, which are basically sweat or potassium salts. And so they're there. Then we've got the wax, which we often would refer to as lanolin, but so there's that component, which when we wash out wool, we can get that lanolin component and has lots of properties that are useful, and then it's running a particular pH. So we've got that floating around in normal white wool. What happens when we get warmth and rainfall together? So we get some moisture, or might not be rainfall even, fog and misty conditions and humidity where you've got moisture combining with warmth, you'll end up in a situation where bacteria is happier. So you start getting bacteria being more active, and they start metabolizing those swint particles, and in doing so release simple carbohydrates from those particles. Those carbohydrates then react with amino acids in the skin debris and wax that are floating around in the skin, in the wool, and produce that yellow discoloration. It then gets absorbed up by the wool fibres. That process, as it happens, also increases the pH of the wool, making it even more susceptible to decomposition and more likely to absorb that yellow discoloration. So you often see when the conditions are right, which is warmth and sunlight, you'll see that yellow staining, and so it's from not from protein or not from other stuff. It's just from this process that we've just gone through. And so I guess the question is, what can you do about that, or what does that mean? And the cool thing about that is that we can change some of those components and therefore change the likelihood of going yellow. And we see that some sheep under those same conditions will go yellow, and some will stay perfectly white. So in those white ones, or the more resistant ones to wool coloration, they tend to have a lower swint percentage, so a higher wax to swint ratio. They have a lower potassium content of that swint, and they have a lower swint pH. And they often, they have a higher yield and lower fibre diameter, are the other correlations that go on there. So finer wool is whiter and higher yielding wool. I guess all of that culminates in being picked up by a negative ASBV or EBV for L colour, which is a score we assign to wool based on, and better when it's under challenge. So if it's been through a humid conditions or warmth and moisture together, then we score it from 1 to 5, 1 being white, 5 being yellow, and everything in between, and end up breeding sheep which will stay white. And the reason we're doing that is obviously to reduce our fly strike susceptibility. We know that wool colour is unfavourably correlated, or higher wool colour score, so more yellow wool tends to be more likely to get breech strike as well as body strike. If we quickly look at body strike, we've got fleece rot incidence, which then leads to body strike. We see that as wool colour goes up, the wool colour score goes up, the incidence of fleece rot goes up, and that's the main nasty in terms of body strike. But wool colour itself has an impact on, or is correlated with fly strike in the breech as well. If we move on now to fleece rot, so beyond that fleece colour tends to be not encrusting. It's just a band of colour. Or it might be the whole staple, or it might be a small part of that staple where those conditions were right for the process I've just described. When we move on to fleece rot, it's interesting. I guess a few differences, but a similar process. So generally in a normal sheep, we've got this wax layer that sits between the skin and the outside world, protecting that skin. What happens when we get those same warm, moist conditions and you get wetting down to the skin level? This is the important thing for fleece rot. You need water right on the skin, which is more likely to happen when in a shorter fleece. In full wool, a sheep, unless it's really wet, might not get wet down to the skin, and then you won't get fleece rot occurring. But this is the reason why you'll see fleece rot first between the shoulders or between the pins on the flatter areas, where you're likely to get pooling of water and likely to get water sitting there for longer. And so when that water sits there, at those potassium salts, the swint reacts or acts as a bit of a detergent and breaks down that detergent, that wax layer, exposing that skin directly to bacterial action or to irritation from the water in the first instance. That results in a release of an exudate that exudate is absolutely perfect environment for bacteria, where you've got that high protein and sugar, energy source for bacteria, and so they get really active and they'll form this crusting, and so that's the exudate mixing with bacteria. If that goes on for longer, that can go from yellow to green to pink, depending on which bacteria are present, and that can be a short banding where then things have dried out again, the bacteria population has gone away, the wax layer is reformed, and then it goes back to white wool, and so you might see a band up in the staple. That will always line up with some period where you had that moisture and warmth continuing together and resulted in that band. But it can get a lot worse if those conditions stay there for long periods of time. The bacteria can get really fired up. So that's what's going on, and obviously the problem with that is that can turn into fly strike through, because that's a nice bacteria environment and exudate. There's a whole heap of things there that are going to be pretty attractive to a maggot. And what we see is that as that fleece rot severity score goes up from no fleece rot right through to very bad fleece rot, the incidence of body strike goes up as well. So it's all making sense. But we just want to quickly go through, I guess, why or what's happening. Because the important thing is that some sheep don't, under the same conditions, same environment, some sheep don't get that same fleece rot or a wool colour, and they're the ones we're selecting for. And again, we score fleece rot in the greasy wool itself on the sheep, and when we score that, we then send that away. It gets turned into a breeding value. So the lower the fleece rot score breeding value, and the lower the wool colour breeding value, the better we go in terms of less fly strike from those sheep. So really, I think a great opportunity to improve the fly strike susceptibility of our sheep. And just quickly wanted to cover wrinkle as well, because it's all lined up with fly strike, and will be the final one of this quick presentation. But essentially, we've got in the absence of breech wrinkle, we sort of got nowhere for the moisture to accumulate, so it'll move on. They'll get wet, they'll move on, and unless it stays there for a long time, we won't get any problems. What happens within those wrinkles, though, is that it provides an environment where the moisture hangs around for longer. So some of the process that I just explained in fleece rot starts occurring. So you get that reaction at the skin level, you get that exudate release. That's then a perfect little moist environment with plenty of nutrients for a bacteria to get cracking. And then obviously that creates a smell. The flies come in and away we go, whether that's dag or urine or whatever's providing the moisture. It's more likely to sit there in a wrinklier skin and therefore be more prone to fly strike. So you got the perfect storm, really. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are breeding away from breech wrinkle, breeding for low colour breeding value and breeding for low fleece rot breeding value to remove the need for, or remove the likelihood or reduce that incidence of fly strike. That'll do for now. Thanks very much for listening. Cheers.